They called him Mr. Clean. Not Marcus Johnson, not Mr. Johnson. Not Marcus from maintenance like he introduced himself. Just Mr. Clean, like that was some kind of joke they never got tired of telling. For 15 years, he pushed a squeaky cart through the marble hallways of Phoenix Capital Management, scrubbing floors that reflected the city lights and cleaning windows that framed million-dollar views nobody appreciated. His gray coveralls had been washed so many times the company logo had faded to a ghost of its former self. His work boots had thick soles that made no sound on the expensive flooring, and he kept a spray bottle clipped to his belt like a gunslinger ready for the next mess. Every morning at 5:30, before the elevators started carrying suits and egos to the upper floors, Marcus was already there, making sure their world looked perfect when they arrived. He knew every corner of that 28-story building downtown, which elevator had the grinding noise on floor 16, which conference room's air conditioning never worked right, and which executive bathroom had the gold-plated faucet that always needed extra polishing. But to the investment bankers, portfolio managers, and financial advisors who worked there, he was part of the architecture, something that existed but didn't matter. The junior analysts walked past him like he was invisible. The senior partners talked through him during elevator rides like he couldn't hear English. And the CEO, Jonathan Blackstone, he looked at Marcus the way you'd look at a vending machine that needed restocking. Blackstone was the kind of man who wore confidence like expensive cologne, three-piece suits that cost more than Marcus made. In 6 months, handshakes that felt like business transactions, and a smile that never reached his eyes. He'd taken over Phoenix Capital from the previous owners 5 years ago, turned it into his personal kingdom where profits mattered more. Then people and quarterly numbers were the only religion that counted. Marcus had watched Blackstone fire entire departments to boost earnings reports, watched him cut employee benefits while giving himself bonuses that could fund small countries, watched him treat workers like line items on a spreadsheet, numbers to be optimized rather than human beings with families to feed. "Hey, Mr. Clean," Blackstone would call out whenever he saw Marcus in the hallway, voice dripping with the kind of casual disrespect that comes from never having to earn anything. "Conference room 12 needs attention. Some client spilled coffee and we've got another meeting in an hour." Marcus would nod, grab his supplies, and clean up other people's messes without a word. Because that's what good janitors do. They fix things quietly, efficiently, and without expecting recognition. But Marcus wasn't just any janitor, and this building held secrets that would make Blackstone's quarterly reports look like grocery lists. The story really began 20 years ago, long before Marcus ever held a mop in that building, back when Phoenix Capital Management was called Southwest Investment Partners, back when it was struggling to stay afloat in a market that chewed up small firms and spit them out like bad coffee. Marcus had just finished his service in the Air Force, honorable discharge with a specialty in logistics and supply chain management. He'd saved every penny he could during his 8 years of service, lived in base housing, ate at the mess hall, and watched his bank account grow while his buddies spent their paychecks on cars they couldn't afford and nights they wouldn't remember. When he came home to Phoenix in 1998, Marcus had $43,000 in savings and a head full of business ideas he'd developed during those long desert deployments. He'd studied the financial markets like other soldiers studied sports statistics, understood cash flow like he understood inventory management, and recognized opportunity like he recognized incoming trouble. Southwest Investment Partners was drowning. The owner, Robert Caldwell, was a good man with bad timing and worse luck. The tech bubble was building, but traditional investment firms were struggling to adapt. Caldwell needed capital injection, needed fresh blood, needed someone who understood systems and logistics and how to make things work when they were falling apart. Marcus walked into Caldwell's office on a Tuesday morning with a business plan. He'd written in longhand and $40,000 he was willing to risk, not as a loan, not as charity, but as an investment. He wanted to buy into the company, become a silent partner, help build something bigger than what either of them could manage alone. Caldwell looked at the young black veteran across his desk and saw something most people would have missed. Not just money, but vision. Not just capital, but competence. Not just an investor, but a partner who understood that success required more than just good intentions. "You sure about this?" Caldwell asked. "Investment business is risky. Lots of smart people lose everything." Marcus smiled. "Military taught me the difference between smart risks and stupid gambles. This feels smart." They shook hands on a deal that made Marcus a 30% owner of Southwest Investment Partners. Caldwell kept operational control, handled the client-facing work, managed the day-to-day operations. Marcus stayed in the background, analyzed portfolios, developed systems, and helped grow the company's assets under management from $12 million to over $100 million in 6 years. By 2004, Southwest Investment Partners had become one of the most successful mid-sized firms in Arizona. They'd survived the dot-com crash, adapted to changing markets, and built a reputation for steady returns and honest dealing. Marcus's investment had paid for itself 10 times over, and his ownership stake had grown to nearly 40% through performance bonuses and profit-sharing agreements. But success brings attention, and attention brings predators. Jonathan Blackstone arrived in 2005 with venture capital backing, aggressive expansion plans, and an offer Caldwell couldn't refuse. $50 million for full control of Southwest Investment Partners, immediate cash out for all existing owners, and promises of bigger profits for everyone involved. Caldwell was tired, wanted to retire, wanted to cash out and move to Sedona with his wife. He called Marcus into his office for one last conversation. "Blackstone's buying us out," he said. "50 million for the whole company. Your share would be about 18 million. Not bad for a $40,000 investment." Marcus looked out the window at the Phoenix skyline, thinking about numbers. That seemed impossible 7 years earlier. What's the catch? No catch, clean sale, fresh start. Blackstone wants to rebrand everything, bring in his own people, turn this into something bigger. What about the employees? Caldwell shifted uncomfortably. He says he'll honor existing contracts for the first year. After that? He shrugged. Marcus understood. Blackstone wasn't buying a company, he was buying assets. The people who'd built Southwest Investment Partners were just overhead to be optimized away once the acquisition was complete. "I'm not selling," Marcus said quietly. Marcus, $18 million. I'm not selling to him. They stared at each other across the desk. Caldwell had known this moment might come, had written provisions into their original partnership. Agreement just in case. If either partner wanted to sell and the other didn't, the non-selling partner had right of first refusal at any offered price. "You want to buy me out?" Caldwell asked. "I want to buy the whole company." The math was simple, but staggering. Marcus would need $32 million to buy Caldwell's majority stake and maintain control of the company. He had about $4 million in liquid assets, plus his ownership stake as collateral. The rest would have to come from investors, loans, and financial engineering that would make or break his future. He spent 3 months putting together the deal, found silent investors who believed in his track record, negotiated asset-based loans that used the company's portfolio as collateral, and structured a buyout that would pay Caldwell over 15 years instead of all at once. When the papers were signed in September 2005, Marcus Johnson owned 68% of Southwest Investment Partners. He was 34 years old, had never taken a business class, and controlled over $100 million in client assets. But he made a decision that would define the next 15 years of his life. He would stay invisible, keep the original management structure, keep Caldwell's team in place, keep operating like nothing had changed. On paper, Southwest Investment Partners was employee-owned, managed by a board of directors, run by professionals who looked the part. Marcus became the janitor, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Because the best way to understand a business is to see it from every angle, to watch how people behave when they think nobody important is listening. Because power is most effective when people don't know you have it. He hired himself through a cleaning service, created a false identity with tax documents and employment history, and applied for the night custodial position at his own company. The hiring manager never suspected that the quiet man with work-worn hands was interviewing to clean his own building. For 2 years, Marcus mopped floors and emptied trash cans while monitoring his investment from the shadows. The company performed well under the existing management structure. Client assets grew steadily, and profits exceeded projections. Everything was working exactly as planned. Then Jonathan Blackstone came back. In 2007, Blackstone's venture capital group made another offer. This time, they weren't looking to buy Southwest Investment Partners. They were looking to destroy it. Hostile takeover, aggressive acquisition, tear it apart, and sell the pieces, for more than the whole was worth. The board of directors panicked. They were good portfolio managers, but they'd never faced anything like Blackstone's corporate warfare tactics, leveraged buyouts, proxy fights, legal challenges that would bankrupt them even if they won. They needed help, needed capital, needed someone who could fight fire with fire. Marcus watched from the janitor's closet as they struggled to find solutions that didn't exist. Watched them consider surrender, consider selling out, consider abandoning the company he'd spent years building into something worthy of protection. That's when he made his second crucial decision. Instead of revealing his ownership and taking direct control, he would let Blackstone win. Let him acquire Southwest Investment Partners. Let him think he'd conquered his prey. Let him walk into a trap he'd never see coming. The hostile takeover succeeded in early 2008. Blackstone's group acquired controlling interest in Southwest Investment Partners, fired the existing management, and rebranded the company as Phoenix Capital Management. They moved into a bigger building, hired flashier talent, and started managing assets like they were playing fantasy football with other people's retirement funds. But they never noticed the fine print in the acquisition documents, never realized that 32% of the company they'd just bought was still owned by a shell corporation registered to someone named M. Johnson, never understood that their new janitor was actually their largest minority shareholder. Marcus kept cleaning floors and watching, but now he was documenting everything. For 7 years, he observed Blackstone turn Phoenix Capital Management into exactly the kind of predatory firm that gave investment banking a bad reputation. Excessive fees that bled client accounts dry. Risky investments that prioritized commissions over returns. Management practices that treated employees like disposable resources. Marcus kept detailed records. Not just financial irregularities, but ethical violations, fiduciary breaches, and regulatory oversights that would make compliance officers break out in cold sweats. He had access to every office, every computer, every conversation that happened after hours when people thought nobody was listening. He documented Blackstone's bonus structure that rewarded advisors for churning client accounts. Recorded meetings, where they discussed hiding fees and complex investment products. Photographed emails that showed clear violations of SEC regulations regarding client disclosure and fiduciary responsibility. But the breaking point came on a Thursday evening in March 2015. Marcus was cleaning the executive conference room when he overheard Blackstone talking to his senior partners about their newest scheme. Pension fund management is where the real money is, Blackstone was saying. Municipal, employees, teachers, firefighters. They don't understand investment complexity. We can charge premium fees for substandard performance and they'll never know the difference. One of the partners laughed. What about regulatory oversight? We'll handle that like we always do. Spread some donations around, hire the right lawyers, make sure the right people owe us favors. These public servants don't have the resources to fight us, even if they figure out what we're doing. Marcus stood in the shadows, listening to them plan to steal retirement funds from teachers and firefighters. People who'd spent their careers serving others, trusting their futures to investment professionals who saw them as easy marks. That night, Marcus didn't go home. He went to his safety deposit box, pulled out 15 years' worth of documentation, and called his attorney. Not the corporate lawyers who handled Phoenix Capital's business, but his personal attorney, a woman named Sarah Chen, who specialized in securities fraud and fiduciary litigation. Sarah spent 6 hours reviewing Marcus's evidence. When she finished, she looked at him with something between amazement and horror. "This is the most comprehensive documentation of investment fraud I've ever seen," she said. "How did you get access to all this?" "I've been there every day for 7 years," Marcus replied. "People say things around janitors they'd never say around witnesses." "Marcus, do you understand what you have here? This isn't just civil litigation. This is criminal fraud, federal violations, prison time for everyone involved." He nodded. "What's my first step?" "First, we protect you. File whistleblower complaints with the SEC, establish your legal standing as a defrauded investor. Then we contact the clients who've been victimized and build a class action lawsuit that will shut this place down permanently." The legal machinery moved slowly, but inevitably. SEC investigators arrived at Phoenix Capital Management on a Tuesday morning with search warrants and subpoenas. They seized servers, froze accounts, and started interviewing employees who suddenly remembered that maybe they'd seen some things that didn't seem quite right. Blackstone tried to lawyer his way out of trouble, hired the most expensive legal team money could buy, and started throwing subordinates under the bus like life preservers. But Marcus's documentation was too complete, too detailed, too damning to explain away. The civil lawsuit moved faster than the criminal proceedings. Within 6 months, Phoenix Capital Management was facing a $100 million class action, judgment, regulatory fines that exceeded their liquid assets, and criminal charges that would send senior management to federal prison. Blackstone's empire collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. The company that had stolen Southwest Investment Partners was bankrupt, discredited, and toxic to anyone who'd ever worked there. But Marcus wasn't finished. On a Monday morning in October 2015, Marcus walked into Phoenix Capital Management without his janitor's uniform. Instead, he wore a navy blue suit, carried a briefcase, and headed straight to the 20th floor, where Blackstone's corner office had been turned into a federal evidence locker. The remaining employees, mostly junior staff who'd had no knowledge of their boss's crimes, were gathered in the main conference room, waiting to hear about severance packages and job placement assistance. They looked up when Marcus walked in, confused to see their janitor dressed like a businessman. "Good morning," Marcus said, standing at the head of the conference table. "My name is Marcus Johnson, and I'm the new CEO of this company." Silence. Someone in the back whispered, "Isn't that the janitor?" Marcus opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. As the largest remaining shareholder of Phoenix Capital Management, and with the previous management team facing federal charges, the board of directors has asked me to take control of operations, effective immediately. He looked around the room at faces that ranged from confused to skeptical to quietly hopeful. "I know this is unusual. I know you're wondering how the man who cleaned your offices is now running the company. The answer is simple. I've been here the whole time. I've been watching, listening, and learning. And now I'm going to fix what got broken." A junior analyst raised her hand. "What happens to us?" "That depends on whether you want to be part of building something better than what we had before," Marcus replied. "Phoenix Capital Management is finished, but Southwest Investment Partners, the company this used to be before Blackstone destroyed it, that company is coming back." Over the next hour, Marcus outlined his plan. Full transparency and client relationships, reasonable fees tied to actual performance, investment strategies focused on long-term growth rather than short-term profits, employee profit sharing that rewarded success without encouraging reckless behavior. Most importantly, a company culture that remembered that they were managing other people's dreams, not playing games with monopoly money. The transition took 18 months. Marcus hired back several managers who'd been fired during Blackstone's hostile takeover, brought in new talent who shared his vision of ethical investment management, and slowly rebuilt the client base that had been damaged by years of predatory practices. He kept his office on the 20th floor, but he also kept his maintenance keys. Once a week, usually late at night, he'd walk through the building with a mop and bucket, cleaning floors and emptying trash cans, not because he had to, but because he wanted to remember where he'd come from and why the work mattered. The junior staff called it eccentric. The senior managers called it inspirational. Marcus called it perspective. By 2018, Southwest Investment Partners was managing over $200 million in client assets, had earned recognition as one of the most ethical firms in Arizona, and was posting returns that proved you didn't have to cheat people to make money. In the investment business, Marcus kept the same desk where he'd planned Blackstone's downfall, the same window view where he'd watched justice slowly catching up with injustice, and the same quiet confidence of someone who'd learned that patience is more powerful than aggression. One afternoon, a new junior analyst asked him about his management philosophy. "What's the most important thing you learned about running a business?" Marcus looked out at the Phoenix skyline, thinking about all the floors he'd mopped, and all the conversations he'd overheard, and all the lessons that had taken 15 years to fully understand. "People will tell you who they really are," he said, "but only if they think you're not important enough to lie to. The best way to understand any organization is to become invisible inside it. See how people behave when they think nobody's watching. Listen to what they say when they think nobody important can hear them." He turned back to the young woman. "And remember that the person emptying your trash can today might be signing your paycheck tomorrow. Treat everyone like they matter, because they do." The lesson wasn't just about hidden ownership or undercover CEOs. It was about assumptions, about how easily we categorize people based on their job titles and uniforms and positions in hierarchies we think we understand. Marcus never set out to teach anyone a lesson. He just wanted to protect his investment and build something worthy of protection. But in doing so, he revealed something uncomfortable about how quickly we dismiss people who don't fit our expectations of success. The janitor might own the company. The cleaning lady might have an MBA. The maintenance worker might understand your business better than you do. We don't know because we don't see them as people worth knowing. Marcus still works at Southwest Investment Partners, still manages millions of dollars in client assets, still walks the halls of the building he's owned for nearly 2 decades. But now when employees see him in the elevator, they don't just nod politely. They ask about his weekend, share stories about their families, treat him like someone whose opinion matters. Because the truth is, everyone's opinion matters. Everyone has a story that's more complex than their job description suggests. Everyone deserves to be seen as more than the uniform they wear or the tools they carry. So the next time you walk past the janitor, the cleaning crew, the maintenance staff, or anyone else whose work keeps your world functioning, remember Marcus Johnson. Remember that the person you're not seeing might be the person who holds more power than you imagine. And maybe, just maybe, take a moment to say thank you. You never know who's been watching, who's been learning, and who's been building something while you weren't paying attention.